Hello, and welcome back to my LinkedIn Live. Today, I have a really great topic I want to share about. Starting last week, we've been talking about back to school, and last week we focused on having a positive mindset and why that is so important when going back to school. This week, we are going to focus on time management and why mastering that skill will really make you an incredibly time savvy mama. So, today I want to talk about two main things. First one is setting boundaries and why that's important. This is not the first time I've talked about this because setting boundaries is so incredibly important. And then second part is tips on staying flexible because I think this is one of the biggest hurdles we have to setting boundaries. We set those boundaries, we create this little box for ourselves, and then we find ourselves kind of locked into that box and we have trouble getting out. So, the second part of this LinkedIn Live will be talking about staying flexible, being a little more nimble. So, first, let's talk about setting those boundaries and why it is crucial for us to be a time savvy mama and why we need to set those boundaries. So, the first part of that is we need to, how can we set those boundaries, right? How do we even know what those boundaries are? In order to understand where to even set your boundaries, you have to find out and identify what your needs are. Where is there space in your schedule, time in your calendar, or time in your week where you need that protected space? So, to give you a couple examples, for me, it's my early mornings, and it is almost automatically protected space because nobody else is awake at that time. So that kind of works in my favor. But while you may be thinking, oh, you are just cuckoo because you wake up at the crack of dawn to get all this stuff done. But while I believe that is partially true, um, it has had so many strong and incredible benefits for me. Getting up before everybody else, first of all, allows me to have a quiet house. Second of all, there are no disruptions because, again, everyone's asleep. But third, it gets my day started on the right foot. So, if I had that protected time later in the day, I may come up with, any number of excuses. I'm tired, I'm cranky, I've had a tough day. The whole day is on my shoulders, basically. But when I start in the morning with that protected space, the day is fresh. It is a fresh page on, the book of life. And I can start it intentionally. I can start it with discipline and I can start it on the right foot, most importantly. So anyway, so identify what those needs are. What are those non-negotiables during your day? Is it, when you're eating lunch, you need that quiet, you want to focus on your reading or you want to watch your favorite TV show? Is it once a week when you have your weekly appointment to, get your nails done or something? Whatever it may be, identify what those needs are. Because then that helps you create those boundaries. Then next, communicate those boundaries clearly. So you want to communicate it with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues, wherever it makes sense. If it's something during the workday, let your colleagues know about it. If it's something in your personal time, let your family know about it and your friends, if that makes sense. So find out, first identify those benefits. Second, let people know about first identify those boundaries. Second, let people that are affected by those boundaries know that you have set that boundary that, hey, you know what? From 5 to 7 a.m. is my protected space. Don't call me, don't text me, don't expect me to, be somewhere. Again, because that time is so early in the morning, most people won't expect that of you. But let's say if it's 5 to 6 p.m. or 8 to 9 p.m. I know certain times me and my husband, when the kids were growing up, I'd have that protected space. Like Monday nights and Wednesday nights were my nights to get work done later into the evening. Or when I just needed that quiet time, like with a book. So then he knew those were the nights when he's, doing the evening routine with the kids. So find what works for you and make it happen. And then third, and I think most importantly, is stick to it. I think as women, we are always like, oh, this week it didn't work. Okay, let's throw that out the window. No, try it again the next week. Try it again the next night and see if you can make it work. Whatever, the very next day, see if you can make it work, because the more consistent we are with it, right? The more consistent you are with it, the more your boundaries will be respected and enforced. And that's the key right there. That 100% is the key right there, because you want your boundaries to be respected. The reason why women have such a difficult time, even setting the boundaries in the first place, is, first of all, we don't know the process on how to make that happen. So here's the process. Identify your needs, figure out where it is that you need help, or that figure out where that, find that time. And it may feel weird in the beginning. I'm going to tell you right now, it will feel weird. So start small, right? Start with 1 hour a week. Start with half an hour a week. Start where it feels right to you. And start where it feels, okay, not where it feels right to you, but start where it feels mildly right to you, and work your way up from there. This week, it might be just 10 minutes or 30 minutes. Next week, work your way up to an hour. The week after that, work your way up, an hour, but twice a week, or 30 minutes twice a week, then 30 minutes 3 times a week. Whatever feels right to you, but be consistent. I know I'm kind of speaking against what I just said, but consistent in your elevation, your escalation of that time. So don't do 3 times a week for half an hour now and then bump back to 1 time a week for half an hour. So try to find that way and make it happen, because if you are so willing to bend and break your rules, then it's going to be really easy for others to bend and break your rules too, or bend and break your boundaries. So stick to it, be consistent. It's incredibly key. So those 3 things we talked about were: 1, identify your needs. And once you've identified them, communicate them to friends, family, colleagues, whoever it may be. And then 3rd, be consistent. This is incredibly key. Be consistent, because if you're not, then nobody else will be consistent with them either. And now the second part is, I know life happens, right? Stuff happens, things are going to get in the way. It's going to be hard to always stay consistent. And what I want you to do there, 3 things I really want you to keep in mind. 1 is just embrace that change. Some weeks are going to be better than others. And it may not always be the same 3 days that you had planned, or may not always be the same 1 hour period. Embrace that change and, roll with it. Roll with it. Change that hour-long window that you had in mind to later in the day. Or if today is really not going to work, switch it to tomorrow. But don't let go of it. Try as hard as you can. Maybe trim it down. Maybe if it's an hour, trim it down to 30 minutes or 20 minutes. But find a way to honor that time, even if it's not exactly the way you had initially envisioned it. And then 2nd, have a backup plan. So you know what, if, doing it at home, doing my morning routine at home is not going to work out for me, maybe I go to the local cafe. Maybe I, change it to the evening, and then I leave the house for that 1 hour period. Maybe I find a nail salon that's closer to home, something, but have a backup plan. Have something in mind where you're like, okay, you know what, I can pivot and I can really make it work. We do not have to have this be a Ross and Rachel situation where, you pivot and your sofa gets stuck and then you're just out of luck. You can pivot in a way where you can still make things work. Had to throw that Friends reference in there because I love that show. And then lastly, practice mindfulness. Be mindful about what you're doing. Be intentional. Don't just willy-nilly make up a plan, but think, okay, you know what, if I'm going to create this little box for myself, where this protected space, then here's what I'm going to do during that time. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 things, or I'm just going to do 1 thing, whatever. Pick what you want to do, but think about what you want to do during that time. How are you going to utilize that time? Because it's really important for you to stay present. And in order to be present, you have to have a plan. And as annoying as that saying may be, but if you fail to plan, then you have planned to fail. So I always, your plans do not have to be elaborate, but what I always try to do is have, even if it's on just a sticky note, saying in the morning, these are the things that I'm going to do. And so when the morning comes, when you get to that protected space of yours, you don't have to think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? Because, I'm so tired and I'd so much rather, just crawl right back into bed and go to sleep. But if you've created a plan for yourself, then you can follow through. So just to recap that second bit right there, what tips for staying flexible when your protected space, becomes a little more unprotected. What you want to do first is you want to think about embracing change. Just lean into it. Second, you want to have a backup plan in mind, because again, not everything is going to go as you've planned. And 3rd, practice mindfulness. So be present where you are. And what that does is it really helps you manage stress. when your backup plan kicks in, when things go awry, which they always will. So I hope that was helpful for you to better understand how we can master time management. And I'll be back next week, and we're going to talk more about how we can weave all of this into back to school and what that can do not only for your kids, but also for you. So thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, keep shining, stay strong, and be mighty.